There's a moment in the twilight of every great empire when the tools of its ascendancy become the instruments of its destruction. The Romans built roads that eventually carried the barbarians to their gates. The British built ships that eventually carried the ideas of independence to their colonies. And now the American hegemony faces its own distinct existential paradox. We are not building roads or ships. We are building a new mind, a digital Leviathan that promises infinite productivity, but threatens to render the human soul obsolete. This is not science fiction. This is the brutal, bleeding edge of the American political reality. While the masses are distracted by the theater of the daily news cycle, a silent, vicious war is being fought in the dark, a war for the architecture of the future. The Republican Party, once a monolith of free market orthodoxy, is fracturing. The coalition that Donald Trump built, a precarious alliance of blue-collar populists and Silicon Valley technocrats, is beginning to buckle under the weight of a single terrifying question: who controls the machine? Welcome to the precipice. We are witnessing the prelude to the 2028 election. But the battle lines are being drawn right now in the shadow of the Trump presidency. The narrative is no longer just about taxes or borders. It is about the fundamental definition of humanity in the face of the artificial intelligence revolution. And the man sitting in the Oval Office, the populist kingmaker, has thrown open the gates to the very forces his base fears the most. To understand the scale of this betrayal, one must look at the mechanics of power currently spinning within the White House. Donald Trump, the self-proclaimed champion of the forgotten man, has surrounded himself with the architects of the new digital order. He has forged a pact with the Silicon Valley elite, men like David Sachs, the crypto czars, and the venture capitalists who view regulation not as a safety net, but as a shackle. Trump's executive orders declare that American AI companies must be free to innovate, a directive that sounds like patriotism but echoes like surrender to the technocratic class. The White House official line is polished and optimistic. AI will augment the worker, not replace him. It is the promise of a golden age. But outside the velvet ropes of Mar-a-Lago, a different reality is taking root. The populist wing of the party, the very people who swept Trump into power, are watching with growing horror. They do not see augmentation. They see obsolescence. They see a transhumanist agenda that threatens the dignity of labor, the sanctity of the family, and the sovereignty of the human spirit. And from this fear, new challengers are rising. They are the heirs apparent, the men who would be king in 2028, and they are sharpening their knives on the whetstone of AI skepticism. Look to Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis, a man known for his calculated political ruthlessness, has identified the enemy. He is staking his reputation on the terrifying premise that his constituents are about to be flattened by this technology. He speaks of Floridians becoming roadkill on the highway of the AI revolution. This is not the language of a deregulator. It is the language of a wartime consigliere. His administration is pushing an artificial intelligence bill of rights, a heavy regulatory shield designed to protect the biological citizen from the digital overlord. DeSantis is betting that the American people are ready to turn on the tech giants, that the fear of being replaced is stronger than the allure of convenience. Then turn your gaze to the mountains of Utah. Governor Spencer Cox represents a different strain of resistance, less visceral perhaps, but morally seething. He views the tech giants with the disdain of a protector, declaring that we do not hate these companies enough. His strategy is pro-human, a phrase that implies the opposition is something else entirely. He seeks to fortify the human element, investing in education, protecting children from chatbot companions, and framing the AI debate as a battle for the soul of the next generation. But the most vocal and perhaps the most dangerous critic is Senator Josh Hawley. He has stripped away the veneer of policy and expose the theological heart of the conflict. To Hawley, this is not just an economic issue, it is a spiritual war. He invokes God in the halls of the National Conservatism Conference, warning that the AI revolution is proceeding on transhumanist lines. He argues that the machine is working against the working man, installing a clandestine elite that seeks to rewrite the social contract. When Hawley speaks, he channels the raw, unpolished fury of the populist base, the feeling that they are being sold out by their own leaders. These three men, DeSantis, Cox, Hawley, are far from ideological duplicates. One is a culture warrior, one is a civility-minded traditionalist, and one is a populist firebrand. But they are united by a singular, powerful current they are breaking with Caesar. They are breaking with Donald Trump on the defining issue of our time. This fracture reveals the deep contradiction embedded in the modern Republican coalition. Trump has welded together two incompatible metals, the working class revolt and the tech oligarchy. It is a structure that cannot hold. AI is the acid that will dissolve the welds. It pits the truck driver against the autonomous vehicle, the artist against the generative algorithm, the religious conservative against the God complex of the coder. And caught in the middle of this tectonic shear is the man who was supposed to be the bridge, Vice President JD Vance. Vance is in a position of agonizing complexity. He is the bridge between the Rust Belt and Silicon Valley, a former venture capitalist who speaks the language of the forgotten man. But now he is silent, handcuffed, as insiders whisper. He cannot speak because his master has chosen a side. While Hawley rails against the machine and DeSantis builds legal barricades, Vance is forced to walk the razor's edge, trapped between his populist instincts and his loyalty to a White House that has embraced the accelerationists. The silence of the vice president is deafening, but the noise on the ground is becoming impossible to ignore. While the White House drafts executive orders in the sterile, air-conditioned quiet of the West Wing, the physical reality of this digital revolution is tearing up the earth in the American South. The battle is no longer theoretical, it has become territorial. Governor DeSantis understands the visceral language of land and heat. He sees the cloud not as an ethereal library of knowledge, but as an industrial parasite, insatiable monoliths of concrete and silicon that demand more power than a city, more water than a farm, and offer nothing in return but the hum of servers processing the obsolescence of his own citizens. In Palm Beach County, the resistance has already begun. It is not a debate, it is a rebellion. Residents line up for hours to scream, "Hell no," at the prospect of new data centers. They sense with a primal intuition that they are being displaced by a new species of occupant, one that does not sleep, does not vote, and does not care. DeSantis is channeling this fury into a weapon. By targeting the energy grid, he is attacking the very lifeblood of the AI Leviathan. It is a tactical masterstroke. If you cannot kill the beast, you starve it. This is the new mechanics of power in the Republican Party, a shift from the abstract defense of free enterprise to the concrete defense of the physical realm against the encroaching digital hegemony. But while DeSantis fights in the open, Senator Marco Rubio moves in the shadows. Rubio is the consummate operator, a man who reads the geopolitical tea leaves with the precision of a Cold War spy master. He is not shouting from the podiums like Hawley. He is whispering in the corridors of the State Department. He sees the current alliance between the GOP and Silicon Valley for what it is, a transitory marriage of convenience destined for an ugly divorce. Rubio knows that accelerationism, the doctrine of unbridled technological speed, is a national security nightmare disguised as economic patriotism. He was the invisible hand that stopped the flow of NVIDIA's Blackwell chips to China, a move that prioritized American dominance over corporate profit. He understands that if the state preemption laws pass, stripping Florida of its right to regulate the federal government will have effectively surrendered its sovereignty to a handful of CEOs in Palo Alto. Rubio is positioning himself as the sentinel, the one who knows that when the sugar high of the tech boom fades, the hangover will be brutal. He is waiting for the moment when the party realizes that the conquering generals of big tech are actually foreign agents in spirit, loyal only to the algorithm, not the flag. To understand this betrayal, we must look back to the architecture of fallen empires. We are witnessing a scene straight out of the late Roman Republic. Picture the triumph of a returning general. He rides into Rome, the crowds cheering, the spoils of war trailing behind him. But look closely at the procession. In the modern iteration of this ritual, the inauguration of Donald Trump's second term, the defeated enemy chieftains were not in chains. They were seated in the VIP box. The tech barons, the Silicon Valley magnates, who had once been the sworn enemies of the conservative movement, were now the guests of honor. They came not as prisoners, but as advisors. They came to whisper in the emperor's ear. History teaches us that when the Praetorian Guard, the elite unit charged with protecting the emperor, becomes more powerful than the emperor himself, the fall is inevitable. The tech right, led by figures like David Sacks, has become Trump's digital Praetorian Guard. They have drafted the executive orders. They have framed the narrative. They have convinced the populist leader that the only way to beat China is to become China, to merge the state and the corporate sector into a singular, unstoppable machine. This is the Faustian bargain of the 21st century. The administration believes it is harnessing a tool, but history suggests it is inviting a master. Just as the Industrial Revolution enclosed the commons and forced the independent yeoman into the factory, the AI revolution threatens to enclose the cognitive commons. It is the centralization of intelligence itself. And for a party that claims to champion the forgotten man, handing the keys of the future to a small cabal of unparalleled wealth, is not just a policy error, it is a philosophical suicide. And at the center of this suicide stands JD Vance. His predicament is Shakespearean. He is the prince in waiting, the chosen successor, yet he is paralyzed by the contradictions of his own rise. Vance is a creature of two worlds, and right now they are tearing him apart. He owes his political existence to the patronage of Peter Thiel and the very tech elite that his base now despises. Yet his soul, or at least his public persona, is forged in the rust of Ohio, in the grievances of the working class who feel left behind by the march of progress. He knows better than anyone that AI is coming for the jobs of the people who voted for him. He knows that efficiency is often a euphemism for unemployment. In Paris, surrounded by the glitter of the global elite, Vance tried to thread the needle. He spoke of opportunity, rejecting the safety narrative as a European weakness. He sounded like a loyal soldier of the accelerationist agenda. But the mask is slipping. Vance is watching David Sacks become the de facto AI czar, a role that should by rights belong to the vice president. He sees Sacks standing next to the president, signing the orders, defining the future. It must gnaw at him. The Hawley types on his staff are whispering that this is a mistake, that the party is walking into a trap. But Vance is handcuffed by ambition. To speak out now is to betray the president. To remain silent is to betray his future electorate. He is playing a dangerous game of wait and see, hoping that he can inherit the crown without inheriting the chaos. But the timeline of technology does not wait for election cycles. By 2028, the architecture of ego that Sacks and the tech wing are building may be too massive to dismantle. Vance risks becoming the ruler of a kingdom that has already been sold. The psychological warfare here is not just between men, it is between competing visions of reality. On one side, the transhumanists who view the human being as a platform to be upgraded. On the other, the humanists, DeSantis, Hawley, Cox, who view the human being as a soul to be protected. Trump, in his transactional genius, thinks he can make a deal with the future. He thinks he can ride the tiger. But the thing about tigers, as the old proverb goes, is that you cannot get off. As the 2028 horizon approaches, the question is no longer who will lead the Republican Party. The question is what will be left of it to lead. Will it be the party of the worker or the party of the machine? The answer lies in the silence of JD Vance and the growing roar of the resistance rising from the swamps of Florida to the high deserts of Utah. It is a gamble of Machiavellian proportions. In the sterile glass-walled offices of the Foundation for American Innovation, the architects of the accelerationist movement are placing their chips on the table. Men like Dean Ball, a former Trump administration official, look at the swelling tide of populist anger and see not a revolution but a miscalculation. It is a bet, Ball warns, a wager that the American people, seduced by the convenience of the algorithm, will ultimately reject the Luddite fears of the resistance. He argues that the public mind is still unformed clay. Most Americans have not yet decided if AI is a monster or a miracle. And in this hesitation, the tech elite sees their opening. They believe that by the time the voters wake up to the reality of their obsolescence, the infrastructure will be too deep, too convenient, and too profitable to tear out. They are counting on the apathy of the masses. They are betting that the sugar high of cheap goods and instant answers will last just long enough to secure the hegemony of the machine. But this is where the psychological war turns darkest. The populist wing, Hawley, DeSantis, and the silent Vance are betting on something far more primal, the human instinct for survival. They know that when the blue-collar worker in Ohio sees his factory managed by a server farm, when the mother in Utah sees her child addicted to a synthetic friend, the apathy will vanish. It will be replaced by a rage that no tax cut can soothe. This is the fault line that will fracture the 2028 Republican primary. It will not be a debate about marginal tax rates or health care subsidies. It will be a referendum on the definition of the human soul, the lingering echo. And so we stand at the threshold of a new epoch. The Trump era, for all its noise and fury, was merely the demolition phase. It shattered the old consensus, broke the establishment, and left the ground clear. But what is being built in the rubble, the post-Trump Republican Party, is currently a ghost in the machine, a paradox waiting to resolve itself. On one side stands the techno-optimist vision, a gleaming, efficient, hyper-capitalist future where America dominates the globe through superior computation led by a fusion of state power and Silicon Valley genius. It is a vision of Rome at its imperial zenith, wealthy, powerful, and utterly detached from the soil that birthed it. On the other side stands the neo-humanist resistance, a darker, grimier, but perhaps more honest vision. It is a party that rejects the inevitability of progress. It is a movement that is willing to smash the loom to save the weaver. It demands that the economy serve the family, not the other way around. It is a vision of Rome as a republic suspicious of concentrated power, jealous of its liberties, and fiercely protective of its citizens against the tyranny of the elite. As the shadow of the 2028 election lengthens, the silence of the leaders becomes a scream. JD Vance, handcuffed by loyalty, watches the clock tick. Ron DeSantis, armed with the power of the state, builds his fortress in the swamps. Josh Hawley, fueled by righteous fire, preaches to the choir of the dispossessed. The echo that lingers in the air is not the chant of a rally, nor the hum of a server. It is the sound of a question that has haunted every great civilization before its transformation. When the tools we build become stronger than the hands that built them, who is the master and who is the servant? The answer will not be written in code, it will be written in history. And in the coming storm, the Republican Party will either find its soul or it will be uploaded to the cloud, leaving the American people behind in the dust of the real world. The choice is ours, but the time is theirs.